Good morning. I'd like to welcome my listeners and viewers in the United States and all around the world. I am Vince Rocco, and it is Tuesday morning in New York City, so let's go behind the headlines and get the real story. But first, this is Talking New York Real Estate. Up front today, in New York City's dynamic real estate landscape, several hot topics continually shape the market and capture shareholders' attention. Affordable housing initiatives remain the forefront of discussion as policymakers, developers, and community advocates seek solutions to address the city's housing affordability challenges. The impact of remote work on housing preferences is another prevalent theme, with shifts in demand for properties that accommodate flexible lifestyles and remote work setups. Luxury real estate trends persist, with a focus on properties offering a unique amenities and lifestyle experience. Also at this hour, technology integration continues to transform the industry, driving innovation in property marketing, transactions, and management. Sustainable and green building practices gain momentum, reflecting a growing emphasis on environmental responsibility and energy efficiency. Regulatory changes and zoning policies remain crucial considerations for developers and investors, shaping future development opportunities and strategies. We will have all that and so much more as Talking New York Real Estate gets underway on this Tuesday morning. And in the news this morning, what is really going on with the New York luxury home market? Well, if you ask any local real estate agent, they will say the market has rarely felt so hit or miss. The numbers in Manhattan point to a post-COVID luxury market that likely bottomed out in 23, according to appraiser Jonathan Miller. In a recent report, he says that in the fourth quarter of 2023, sales of luxury Manhattan homes were down by 5.9% compared with the same period a year ago. It seems to be improving, as so far in 2024, luxury contract activity has ticked up incrementally, even with a decrease in inventory in a rising stock market. Signed contracts were up 9% so far through February for apartments priced at $5 million or more, according to Urban Digs. And Miller says it looks like 2024 will be better, but it won't be a boom. Thanks to higher interest rates, all cash deals are dominating the market, with roughly 68% of all transactions unfinanced in the last 4 months. That is up from the usual average of around 50%. And finally, the U.S. Justice Department and more than a dozen states filed a blockbuster antitrust lawsuit against Apple last week. The long-anticipated lawsuit comes after years of allegations by critics that Apple has harmed competition with restrictive App Store terms, high fees, and has walled green technology ecosystems. They allege that Apple has consolidated its monopoly power not by making its own product better, but by making other products worse. That, according to Attorney General Merrick Garland. Apple is the latest but largest in a string of big tech companies to face monopoly accusations as the U.S. government clamps down on a massive industry that went largely unchecked for the past several decades. And with me today are Jordan Shea from Douglas Elliman and Nicholas Cuomo from Keller Williams Realty.
This beautiful set here at Studio 1873 is brought to you by the Everset. The Everset provides full-service staging and furniture rental solutions in the New York area. For more information, please visit us at staging.theeverset.com or email us at staging@theeverset.com to request a free proposal.
All right, good morning, everybody, again. We're going to talk today about hot markets, and we're going to talk about what's trending out there, what's not trending. I mean, if you talk to one person, they give you this. You talk to somebody else, they give you that. But we have been in a market in the last year and a half that's been questionable at best. As I said at the top of the program, if you ask agents today what is going on with the luxury market, they will all say it's either hit or it's miss. If you talk to them and ask them the same question about the non-luxury market, just anything else under, say, $4 or $5 million, it's the same kind of it's hit or it's miss. We've gone through the last year and a half a struggle over the mortgage interest rates, over at 7% at one point, down under 7 now in the mid sixes, I think, the last time I checked. So we're getting better. The Fed still says they're going to lower interest rates 3 times this year, but not right away. So we'll see when that happens, probably not till June or July. But in the meantime, I've seen a little bit of an uptick in the marketplace since the beginning of the year, when it was announced that at some point this year we would be correcting some of the higher interest rates. Now, seeing is believing. Let's see what goes on. But in the meantime, there are always trends. whether it's in New York City, whether it's in real estate, just in general, and there's always a hot market or not. So we're not in a hot market, but we are in a market now where, again, we can see a little bit of a shift, and I'm hoping that the shift continues. Jordan, let me start with you. What emerging trends are shaping the luxury market right now in 24, and how do they differ from previous years? As I said a minute ago, it's been either hit or miss, but there are some trends. What are those trends, and how do they differ from the past?
I think there's been sort of a drastic shift that I've seen in terms of the location for the luxury purchaser. So while there was an era, and a very, very long one, where luxury meant living uptown.
Correct.
Right? And then there was a shift downtown, when downtown, vibrant restaurants, cool, the scene, what have you.
Lower than 14th Street or below 14th Street, or I'd get a nosebleed.
Exactly, right? So you saw, all of a sudden, you saw neighborhoods that would have been less than desirable, let's say 30, 40 years ago, all of a sudden becoming luxury markets. What comes to mind? Soho comes to mind. Used to be a very unsafe neighborhood. Tribeca comes to mind. Used to be no man's land. Chelsea is another prime example of that. The West Village and Greenwich Village, right? So you see all these places that used to be idiosyncratic choices for people that wanted to specifically live. They were bohemian, for instance. They were artists, or they were this or that or the other. And there was a general shift from the Upper East and Upper West luxury, right, to being downtown. All of a sudden, you could have all of this, and you could sort of snub your nose. So nouveau riche, or the bourgeoisie versus, whatever. I'm not French. But
sounded good.
So anyway, so we had that shift, but there's now a new shift, in my opinion, back uptown. And you're seeing a lot of luxury new development, specifically on the Upper East Side, that hasn't been there in ages. A lot of it is due to Naftali Group, which is building a lot of product up there.
And really nice stuff, by the way.
Really, really nice
Beautiful stuff.
And there's been a shift, in my opinion, because of schools. Now, we can't, in our business, tell people what schools are where because of innumerable reasons, some of which are valid, some of which are not. However, it's just common knowledge that there are a lot of private schools uptown. And where we could stick our kid in an Uber and it was fine to go 30 minutes each way and live in Tribeca and live in Soho. Now that 30-minute commute is doubled. So now it's an hour each way. And it doesn't make sense. So there's sort of this migration, if you will, uptown. That's a trend I'm seeing very recently.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. And as you said, it's been fluctuating uptown, downtown, back uptown again. That's
People
fine.
moving for schools. It's wild. Who would have thought?
It's wild, but what do you define as the luxury market? I mean, we look at a report, every week, the Elshan report, and she kind of defines luxury as $4 million and above. Mm-hmm. Okay, what is the real number? I think it's more than 4 million. I think it's probably 5 or 6 million and above. How do you define that luxury market? And for people who are moving back uptown for schools or whatever other reason, what are they paying?
So it's a misleading figure to say 4 million. So for instance, I'm paying 4 million, but if let's say that I pay $3 million for a 1-bedroom apartment, that's a luxurious purchase, right? If I pay $2 million for a studio, that is a luxurious purchase.
100%.
Right? So it is a sliding scale of what luxury is actually defined. Unfortunately, we have to use a baseline number of 4. I think it's, to your point, somewhere between 4 and 5 million. We can say and just baseline it out. It's going to get you a 2-bedroom, or it's going to get you a 3-bedroom in a condo building, basically. And in a condo building, your basic package of amenities for a luxury product, quote, luxury product, will be a doorman, storage, gym, laundry in unit, maybe a kid's playroom. Right? I mean, that's sort of the thing that would be packaged in a luxurious purchase.
Yeah. And are these more cash buyers or finance buyers? I mean, at that level, I would assume, as most other people do, that it's more of a cash situation. As I read at the top of the show, cash buyers are up 68% over the last year, when the number normally floats around 50. Mm-hmm. So 68%. So are they spending on the luxury apartments, or is it just in general?
Well, I think cash purchasers, an interesting thing to consider about them is that a cash purchaser has options, right? So
Yeah.
if you're using leverage traditionally in normal housing markets that are not what we had before, which was, let's say, 2.5% interest rate. But in a normal market, let's float that rate up to like 4. Let's just say 4% is a normal market. It's not. It's still below, but for the sake of this discussion. So 4% is a floating rate. We're there. You use leverage, right? Before, like, using leverage is an option for the wealthy, right? Where can my money best be served? Now, when you're doing an all-cash purchase, like we're seeing a lot more of, the 68%, we've fallen into the cash is king market, where
Correct.
it's not so much that there are more cash purchasers. There are just less purchasers using mortgages.
Correct.
Right? The number of cash purchasers hasn't really gone up that much, I don't think. Their just percentage has been skewed because so many people have exited the marketplace because of the exorbitantly high interest rates.
Nick, let's talk about your neck of the woods, the Hudson Valley.
Sure.
King of the Hudson Valley, super successful agent here. So when you talk about cash purchases, are you seeing a lot more cash up there, or about the same, or more finance deals?
I think what has happened is, there's always been a balance between cash and mortgage buyers or buyers using financing, but the market and the dynamic of the market has changed so much that from the pandemic, somebody who purchased the property in 2019 for $500,000, they can sell their property for $750,000 last year, this year.
That's quite a profit in a couple of years.
Right, and this is not New York City. So this
Right.
is your everyday rural suburban market, and the value increase has come from the inventory diving down further and further each year, which has raised home values higher and higher. But there's still a tremendous amount of buying demand in my market. So when you said that the market's not hot, the Hudson Valley really hasn't been any hotter, and that's because there's just nothing to buy. I mean, inventory in certain counties up by me, like Rockland County, the inventory is down 30% from this February to last February.
That's
And
significant.
in other counties, if you go up to Sullivan, it's down 5%, but it's down wherever you go.
All right, let me ask you something. So, I mean, my family's all up in Westchester, as you well know, and I notice that when properties come on the market in Westchester, they fly off the market 1 week, 2 weeks. I mean, I kind of track a lot of it because my sister is looking, as we talked about before the show.
Right.
It just doesn't last.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the frenzy to buy something in the suburbs is insane. Now, I will agree, the inventory is depleted there, just like it is here in New York City, significantly. But when something comes on the market, it flies off the market. What is still driving the move to the burbs, or people already in the suburbs wanting to just buy something new or sell something and then buy something new? Why is it so? What I'm trying to get my head around sometimes is, why is it so different than what's happening here in Manhattan, where we have so many more people and so many more apartments available per se?
Right.
Why is the frenzy up in the suburbs killing us here in New York?
Because since the pandemic, there is a value placed on safety and privacy, and the suburbs became a sanctuary. So that's that value. There's a different level of value that's placed on living in the suburbs.
But we can honestly say, and Jordan, help me out here, we can honestly say, though, that until this past year or so with the interest rate dilemma, we really haven't seen people leaving the city to go to the burbs like they were, during the COVID pandemic. In fact, with the rise of remote work and digital everything, you can be in the suburbs. You could also be here in your apartment in New York. If I don't have things to do in a particular day showing an apartment, I'm working, on my dining room table, on my computer, because I can do that. and I can be connected to every place and everything that I need to be connected to. So is the rise of remote work driving more people to the burbs, out of the city and into your neck of the woods, or is it just not?
In my opinion, with the people that I see moving out and looking right in the valley, for instance, it's not remote work anymore being the driving factor, because they've already been remote for so long, right? So if they're moving now, they're not moving for a reason that occurred 5 years ago,
Right.
or 4 years ago, however long that was. But a lot of what's driving it is a lack of move-in ready inventory here in the city, right? And
That's big.
And the monthly carrying costs, right? So at a certain point here in the city, you say, I'm in a 2-bedroom apartment and my common charges are this, my HOA fees, and my real estate taxes are this, and now all of a sudden I'm spending upwards of close to $10,000, sometimes $12,000 to carry a 2-bedroom apartment.
Yeah.
And it's the interest rate problem. So the interest rate, so if you're going to be taking a hit in the interest rate, right, I'm going to be paying 6%, let's say 6.5%, whatever, it doesn't matter. If you're going to be taking a hit and your monthlies are so damn high, then you're going to start looking elsewhere, because it's not a question of the overall nut of I'm going to pay $1 million for this or $2 million or whatever. That doesn't matter. How much am I paying monthly? And what am I getting for that price on a monthly basis? And that's driving folks. Also, and here's the other thing. A lot of people got married, and a lot of people had at least one kid during COVID, and now they might be on their second kid.
It's technically a baby boom.
It is a mini baby boom, but I'm seeing it. All of my friends are having second kids right now.
No, you're absolutely
And
correct.
you just look up in the eye and you're like, okay, cool. This is what people are doing. They're just moving out for that reason.
And that's fine, and we'll get to that in a second. But in addition to them moving out for more space or whatever, we're finding here. I mean, Jordan, you're absolutely correct. I mean, what I think has stalled and slowed down the market here in New York City with the interest rate increase is exactly what you said, the monthlies. Everybody looks at the monthlies, and if you're going to be spending $10,000, $12,000, $15,000 a month to live in a 2-bedroom apartment, in New York City, trying to raise kids, trying to send them to private school or whatever, your monthly nut is going to be a lot of money. So maybe that is what was driving a lot of people to the suburbs. Maybe that continues right now, but then there's always going to be the person or the family that needs to be here for whatever the reason is. Whether they're working remotely or not, they still need to be here.
The reason why the pandemic is still relevant where I am is because it's not so much that there's buyers leaving the city in droves. It's not that.
No.
It's just that the inventory was choked out so bad because there was the moratorium, so landlords couldn't do evictions. Banks couldn't do evictions.
We still have that
normally
problem.
that was kind of the equilibrium of the market, and that never got a chance to fully recover. So all these different things that happen, that's why we're still in this market today. It's not that there's so many buyers leaving the city. It's just that from all of that, that's where we are today. All of those things that have taken place.
Correct. How are buyers, Jordan? How are buyers readjusting their mindset to the higher monthlies right now as they're coming back to the market? For example, they held back for a long time, and they kind of sat back and waited for some of the interest rates to come down. Sale prices really have not come down. How are they adjusting in their mind the fact that, okay, well, it looks like we're pretty static where numbers are concerned, and they're probably not going to get too much better, so I think I'm going to come back to the market. How are they adjusting their mindset to re-entering the marketplace and having to pay a lot higher than they ever paid before? I mean, we've all seen it in our businesses. They don't like it, but they're doing it.
They're coming to terms with this is not a short-term thing, but it's also not forever, right? Interest rates.
Refinance you can do.
You can refinance. You can float your rate. You can you can recast. There's so many other things. Now, the reason why people are coming back to the market is because their leases are up. And another reason why people are coming back to the market is because maybe they managed to get a promotion in the last year. Maybe they changed jobs. Maybe they were able to save. Maybe that not idiot, but let's call it not risk averse, cryptocurrency wallet of theirs is all of a sudden back up to all-time highs. Maybe
we're going to get to that in a minute.
Maybe they were on gold. I don't know. But whatever it is, they're in a financial position a year, maybe 2 years later. That's far better than they were when they were already sort of on a shoestring and a prayer.
And I would even add in that everybody got a taste of 8% interest rates in October. So now to come down to just under 7%, that was enough to incentivize buyers to move forward after seeing where rates could have gone, and then to get a second period where there's a reset.
Well, and also, too, sort of to that point, is that people, the opportunistic folks, want to be first in line because they might have a little bit more leverage because pricing where you are might not be down, but it might not be trending up as high as it was or as hot as it was. Same here, right? So maybe that if somebody has to sell, maybe I can get a little bit more of a discount than if I buy in another, let's say, 6 months and the rates are in the fives.
Right.
And there's a lot more people that can afford it. Less competition, lower pricing.
Right.
All right, we have to take a break. You're listening to Talking New York Real Estate on the More Network. We are coming right back. Don't go anywhere.
What do you really need to know about buying or selling a home? First, it's serious business. And it's complicated. There's a lot of money on the table, and emotion too. You need an agent who knows the ropes. So, whether you're buying or selling your home, work with professionals who have a mastery of the craft.
Okay, we are back. All right, let's talk a little bit about the rental marketplace because where is that trending? We have seen in the past where because of the high interest rates and because of the low inventory, people were renewing their leases more than they ever wanted to, looking out to get a new lease somewhere else, for example. But the prices on the rentals have increased ridiculously. I mean, I represent a condo. I talk about it all the time on the show in Midtown West, 108 units. And so I resell them or I rent them for owners who don't want to sell their asset. Not last summer, the summer before and the fall of 21. I guess it was in 22. I'm sorry, summer of 22 into the fall of 22. Every time I put a rental on the market, I was whacked and inundated. First of all, we raised the price significantly from what the last tenant was paying. The amount of traffic at one open house was insane. When you're getting 17 offers on a rental the first day, gone the second day, I would sit back and think, the world has gone crazy. Now, we're not there any longer on the rental side. The rental market has kind of subsided a little bit, but where are we right now in New York City?
Well, in New York, I mean, it's still a question of supply and demand.
Mm-hmm.
So really, that's the curve that we all follow. So, I had a client the other day being last month, pay. I think he was paying $5,000 for a studio that was really ramshackle at best.
$5,000
for a studio in the West Village. He wanted to, quote, live in a shoebox in the West Village because the location mattered, right? So there are certain inventory squeezes in terms of supply, right? And frankly, too, the demand curve is the same. So, like, while we haven't seen a skyrocket in pricing last year, I posit that a lot of that is because people signed 2-year leases.
Yeah.
And people sign 2-year leases, and they're going to go to the marketplace again this year and discover that the 7% increase that their landlord is giving them to stay in the unit still pencils better than moving, getting another unit, and paying a broker fee.
Yeah.
Because to amortize all those costs, it doesn't make sense if you're only going to stay in a unit for 2 years, let alone 1 year.
Correct. And we saw in the COVID period, the pandemic period in 2020, early 21, people getting basement floor discounts on apartments here in New York City. And then after their two-year lease ran out, right, in 23, they were going up almost 50% 40%, 30%. My niece was one of them. She started at $2,400 for a gorgeous one-bedroom duplex on the Upper East Side with an enormous outdoor terrace. And when her lease came up in 2 years, they raised that to almost $4,000 a month, which is probably where it needs to be. But how do you go from $2,400, I think it was like $3,950. How do you do that?
Then I looked at them.
It was a gorgeous apartment. She moved.
There's an apartment that client's getting that in 2017 rented for $7,000.
Yeah.
Okay. 7 years later, the apartment is renting for $10,000.
Yeah.
Which is quick math. That's like 40-ish% increase.
See, these are the times where I say, I mean, listen, there's a time and place for everything. There's a market for everybody. But when you're spending that kind of money in a rental every month here in town or anywhere, right? Does it not make sense to turn that into a purchase, to buy something? I mean, I know the monthlies are higher these days, but when you're spending $10,000 on a rental, you know, you could put that towards a mortgage, to your taxes if it's a condo, toward your common charges. I mean,
100%. But then you're living in a one-bedroom, and you want to be in a two, right? That's the whole conundrum. Is okay, to your point, it's not a one-to-one anymore because of interest rates.
How do you spell the word trade-off? Which we do a lot here in New York City, right? There's a lot of trade-offs. Hudson Valley. All right, tell me about the rentals in the suburbs.
Yes.
Are there a lot of them, and what are the prices?
I would agree that the rents have softened, but to see buy levels going for $3,250 or $3,300 with oil heating, which can be incredibly expensive if you have a 275
That's a steal,
gallon. Really. It's different, but it's the new norm. And to see people, fork out that kind of money is substantial. So when it comes to rents and where rents are going, you have people who are they'd rather stay with their in-laws for a longer period of time, or stay where they are, or pay a little bit more to their current landlord, or rent from a friend. There's just a different dynamic with the rental market to see where it was and where it is today. But the rents eventually do, I think, have to come down because it's just it's getting out of control. Because now you have landlords asking for $4,000 for a buy level, and they're sitting for longer, which leads to a market correction eventually. And that's what's happening right now. Well,
as we
just can't afford this.
As we always say here in town, I mean, the market speaks. And if 4,000 is too much, or if 10,000 is too much, the market speaks, and all of a sudden, you might be facing some type of a correction. As far as trends are concerned, let's talk a little bit about sustainable living. Eco-friendly features becoming standard. Developers are looking at all of these green features, all of these, smart home features in new development buildings. How, though, is the buyer set out there dealing with all this? Are they looking for this? Are they asking for these things? I mean, because when you snap on all of these, eco-friendly whatevers, to me, prices go up. I believe here in town we have a problem with new developments to begin with. They're not selling as robustly as they used to. A lot of that is because of the common charge. Well, the common charges, yes, are increased, but also the real estate taxes are greatly. So now you start snapping on all of these extra features or amenities. Now the prices are getting crazy. Are people really looking for these sustainable, eco-friendly features in apartments here in New York City? And in the old housing stock, you can't add those things easily.
It's not. I have yet to encounter, and I know that there are exceptions to everything, right? I have yet to encounter a purchaser who says, I want to be in the greenest building. I doubt that they live in New York, that person. They probably live in more...
Does your average New Yorker even understand what that means?
They live in earth-conscious communities, and we are not one, right? That type of purchaser. I will say that most of the innovation towards clean energy and, to your point, what we've been discussing, is state-mandated.
Correct.
And developers wouldn't put it in unless they had to. And the only reason why a developer ever does anything is because they have to or because they'll make money. That is it. There is no egalitarian hair on a developer's head. They don't care. It's just math and what policies are in place, and purchasers are happy to assume what they have to, right? So we're talking about eco-friendly. Well, that's terrific. Your energy costs are down. That's lovely. That's very good. We're consuming less in terms of carbon emissions. Awesome. My bills are lower. Terrific, right? I can multi-zone and smart control my air conditioning. I love that, right? And we can put whatever tag we want on it and say that it's because we want us to be an X-star building and LEED certified, what have you. But I'm finding that people just want the best product available, and things like the environment are a nice bonus. They're a cherry on top, but they're not the whole cake.
Nick, in your neck of the woods, is eco-friendly the way to go? Are people even thinking about it? Is it important? Is it a must-have?
I don't think any builders are focusing substantially on that matter. It's just a matter of does the development, do you have privacy away from your neighbors, or are you going to be side by side? It's not so much a matter of the material. Well, the materials that go into it are important, but
So it goes along with the want for space and security
green,
and
right. Yeah,
right.
it's just
Okay.
it's just a matter of that preference. I see more of an emphasis on of privacy and seclusion away from your neighbors, or being okay with being in a neighborhood where you can see your neighbors right to left and across the street.
What about any and all new regulations that are happening here in New York City to address issues like housing affordability and equitable access to housing? I mean, do you have that issue up in the Hudson Valley at all, or are you struggling with affordable housing like we are here in New York City? We don't have enough. There doesn't seem to be any concrete plan from city government or state government or local city council people to get us where we need to be for affordable housing. How important is that in the suburbs? Or does it even exist?
It was important enough for Governor Hochul to put out a proposal. I can't remember the exact number, if it was 800,000 or to build 100,000 new homes in upstate New York.
100,000.
But her proposal was denied. So there definitely is an affordability and a housing inventory crisis, and that was one of the steps to remediate that problem. So when it comes to affordability, they're trying, but there's not too much happening in that matter to keep to resustain where inventory needs to be.
What is the lay of the land here in New York City? I mean, we can all complain about the lack of affordable housing. My opinion is that not too many people are paying enough attention to it from a real estate agent perspective, or even from companies that we work for, or the developers that are building developments out there. Are they thinking, in terms of building more affordable housing? And as Governor Hochul proposed something that was recently turned down,
It was last year.
Well, last year, but we've had people on the show this year talking about, the dilemma that we're in with affordable housing. How does that get fixed? I mean, does it ever get fixed?
It's really tough to fix affordable housing and just the housing crisis that we have. There are ways to do it, but there'd be radical shifts in government policy, and then also radical shifts in the overall perspective that a lot of the major landlords and developers have. I think that for the most part, unfortunately, in our business and specifically our sector of the business, so speaking about real estate brokers, we care about affordable housing when our housing feels like it's too expensive. Other than that, we don't really care that much. And
Right.
I think that's also kind of a problem. And so there's obviously so many vacant, rent-stabilized, rent-controlled units here in the city.
Yeah.
Those landlords have never been subsidized for that by the government. They've just been sort of had forced things. There's things like that. I mean, there's entire industry, cottage industry, built around affordable housing developments. But the cost of land in Manhattan in particular doesn't warrant that type of product, right? So it's the cost of the bricks, hard cost, soft cost, and then what can you do with it? And unfortunately, there's been the overall this is not the correct term, but so forgive me, but it's not whitewashing, but it's been greenwashing. It's all about money. right? And greenwashing is a different term, but in this case, it's greenwashing of Manhattan, right? And all of Manhattan is gentrified because it's all priced.
Yeah. Are there rent-stabilized apartments available for renters out there who would like one of those units? I mean, who wouldn't? Versus, market rent, or what we call free market rent, when you're out there looking to rent something for the first time. Can someone find a stabilized apartment?
Of course, they can, but they're typically not heavily advertised or advertised that much. There's a lot of competition to it. But there are government resources available where people can search and find almost every either building in the city that has a rent-stabilized or rent-controlled unit, or what I'd like to refer to as a non-free market unit. So you can find all the buildings that have them, and you can do some more digging and actually find which units are not free market units. Like, it's possible. It's just very onerous. And I would have to say that I think the interface is almost... It's so bad, I think it's almost negligent or intentional.
I want to talk about foreign buyers. So, Nick, my question to you is, where are your buyers coming from to your territory and upstate? Are they coming from the city? Are they coming from all of the boroughs? Are they coming from foreign lands, international buyers? I was doing some research a couple of weeks ago, or I was teaching rather, foreign buyers in continuing ed. And one of the things I was talking about is that the foreign international buyer right now is not necessarily just buying in New York City. They're buying all over the place, in places like Florida, in places like California, Arizona, Texas, whatever. The number one international buyer into the U.S. these days is from Canada, and everybody doesn't, even think about that, because Canada is almost like another state. It's such a border country of ours. We don't realize it's another country. But they are the number one investor in this country. Of course, Florida, because it's warm, and everybody wants to be warm from the cold weather, but also here in New York. So we have seen how the international buyer or the foreign buyer has slowed down significantly in New York City for a whole host of political reasons and whatever else, trade wars and on and on. Are you seeing people from outside of your area buying in your area, coming from other places, or not?
Not the usual buyer that I deal with, mainly in my price point of $850 to $900 and down. But as you go into higher price points, yeah, absolutely. But the buyers that I see on a regular basis are a small percentage of out of state. And then you have your people who are moving up north from here in the city, and you have your local buyers. That's the general mix.
Because there was also another story that I was looking at where millennials have finally gotten into the buying mode of homes, okay? After getting over, I'd rather spend my money on partying and having fun and going out and dinners, whatever, meeting my friends. Now they're buying. But they're doing more of that outside of New York City than they are in New York City, for obvious reasons. Right? Because it's more affordable. Same thing with Gen Z. Gen Z may be still too young to buy, but they're sitting back thinking, well, when and if I can buy, where am I going to do that? So is that a trend out to the neighborhoods, out to the suburbs rather, because of price? Or are they going to struggle and rent until they can buy something here in New York?
For me, the millennial sector that's purchasing now, they're still backed by their parents.
Correct.
And very few of them have been so successful that they're just going to purchase independently. A lot of times that mentality is, why am I throwing my money away on rent? Right? That is a mentality, right? So if you hear that from a millennial, they heard it from their parent. Right? It's just the way it is.
Right. There's a lot of parental help buying apartments, but yet they still have to have a good enough job to continue to pay for that, right? They can't just say, Mom or Dad, buy me an apartment or buy me a house, and then not be able to afford it.
Every one of my millennial purchasers, the parents are going to cover the mortgage.
Really?
Every one of them. Because they just think it's true.
I didn't have parents like that.
Yeah.
Me neither. They're going to make an arrangement to where, whatever they would have to pay in rent, they pay to the parent writes the check otherwise.
Why is this happening?
Beautiful.
Where are the parents getting the money from?
the parents had the money, but their kids are staying in New York, and they want to see their kids be successful. And it's just the price point is so much higher. It's not that parents helping kids out buy something is so crazy of an idea. It's just our prices are nuts.
I mean, going to the days where parents, and I'm in the business 22 years, and parents have always given their kid, for lack of a better word, down payment money. And then you're on your own, kid. I'll give you the down payment money. You go get your financing. You go get your whatever you want. But here's the down payment money, and God bless. Now they're paying the mortgage. It's like, what else? Right?
Parents are helping their children longer with their finances.
Are you seeing this in the suburbs?
A little, yeah.
Buying houses for their children.
Here and there.
Lack of a better word, children.
There'll be help. But I just make sure that there's no gifted money along the way. And that, if somebody does accept gifted money from a relative, that they run it by their lender first so that they don't go and destroy their financing along the process.
Well, it has to be gifted money with a no payback clause in the letter.
Right.
Okay,
So
I'm giving you $100,000 worth of whatever the number is, and you don't ever have to pay me back. I like you that much,
Right.
okay? Then a co-op board here in New York City will accept it, and a bank will accept it. Now, of course, we all know that's hogwash, right? But it is what it is.
So family does help, but I just make sure that it's organized when they offer to help.
Right.
Well, and, it's not just millennials. I have a purchaser who's closer to your generation than mine.
Old. That's okay. I got big shoulders.
Whose favorite relative, when the purchaser was going to buy her first home, favorite relative said, I'd rather see you get a slightly better place than have to live in a shoebox.
Yeah.
So this was going to go to you anyway at my passing. I'm within that spectrum of time where that's, within the next decade. I'd rather see you enjoy your life and be set up for success. And I'd rather see you enjoy your inheritance while I'm still alive. So you are seeing that too.
Yeah, and that's perfectly fine. So overall, though, what you see trending here, anything in particular that stands out, that pops out? I mean, you said that the neighborhoods, I was going to say, what neighborhood is hot right now? Obviously, the trend is moving back uptown. The trend is being closer to schools. The trend, I believe, is, people who are working remotely now because they can, and they're not going into their offices on a regular basis or every day. So they're looking for that extra home office space. And maybe if they can, or if they can afford it, they want that outdoor space, right? Because should we have another pandemic, should we have another, crisis, at least I can go sit on my deck or my balcony or my whatever and breathe some fresh air, okay? Is that all still within the realm of, people and their wish list and what they want?
Well, on tours, I find it very interesting these days that, it was so funny when we were showing buildings before. You'd pass by the resident lounge and the lobby and what have you, the library, right? And there would never be anyone in there.
Right.
And we would even refer to it jokingly, oh, that's a library, nobody's ever in there, so you can go down there.
No one ever in the gym either.
No one's ever in the gym. Now people are using those building amenities that were just like dead space before. And buyers and renters are all requesting to see the common workspaces, the conference rooms, not just the lounge areas, but the rooms that they can use privately for either Zoom calls or what have you, or actual conferences, and the gyms as well. And I'm seeing a lot of people care more and more about private outdoor space and less about rooftop outdoor space, because rooftop denotes a sort of pleasurable off-work type thing.
Correct.
People want something that's more usable.
And more private.
And more private.
Rooftop has neighbors, other people.
People are like, that's a rooftop, great, right? They're not as enthusiastic or sort of enamored with it. And there's been a return because of, current events and the general feeling regarding safety issues. There's been a return, I think, of the strict requirement to have a doorman.
Absolutely.
And that's a really, quote, hot thing.
Which after 22 years of having a doorman, I'm like over it. Right. If I ever moved again, which I'm probably not going to, but, doorman, okay.
Come east.
Come here. where I started. Go back to where you begin, right?
The air is cleaner and the people are nicer.
Oh, there you have it. Them are fighting words, mister. Okay. I live on the Upper West. It's like, okay, whatever. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere. Okay, we are back. Talking about trends, talking about hot trends. I mean, we've been in this trend for a very long time, and that's social media. And now we're talking about artificial intelligence. I mean, so a combination of both. Social media marketing can play a crucial role in the real estate industry by providing a powerful platform to connect with potential clients, right? Build brand awareness of ourselves and showcase our properties when we have listings to showcase. How then is our presence, how can our presence help us based on what I just said? Find new business, generate new business, continue existing relationships. Because what I find sometimes in social media, it's more than just, trying to find new clients. It's also maintaining the clients that you have. They watch you. They follow you. Okay? They're on there all the time. I tell the same story all the time when I had my dog Jet, through the years, and I'd go on a listing appointment and I'd show up and I'd be talking, to the couple or whatever, or the person who owned the apartment. And out of nowhere, sometimes the conversation would turn into, hey, you've got the cutest dog, and it looks like your relationship with your dog is wonderful. And at first, when I first started hearing that, I'd be like freaked out thinking, how on earth is this person?
I know. I just had that with a client.
No, I have a dog.
She wanted me. I was at a lease signing, and the landlord brought her assistant, and she said, "Show at the end of the lease signing." She said, "Show Jenny the little dog." And I was thinking, how do you know about the little dog? And she said, "Oh, I went on your Facebook."
To my point, the way we Google people and the way we look at people on social media, especially buyers, you don't think they're doing that before you come to their apartment or their home or their whatever, saying, hey, who are you? I was referred to you or whatever, but I don't know you. So my little Jet got a lot of attention when I go on listing appointments. And, I used to think maybe I'll take her with me someday, and I actually get that listing. Bottom line is, how is it helping you, Jordan? Is it helping you? Do you pay a lot of real estate attention to it, or do you just post stuff about you with the same mindset that you're trying to build a brand, maintain clients, or even get new clients?
I think it's maintaining awareness. Everybody knows who you are, right? They all know what you do.
Correct.
You don't have to hit them with a frying pan every day and talking about the market. People want to know what's happening. People, if you go, what's the market like? What is the hot topic of conversation?
Correct.
Post an update about that maybe once a week. Show a beautiful property. People are very visual. I don't know.
They are.
Do these types of things. Other than that, be the best, most presentable version of yourself, and it will pay dividends. I think right now, if I could give any advice, I would say that positioning oneself as an expert on social media is going to pay off, especially with the shift that will occur because of the buy-side commission issue. And the barrier to entry, if I can digress a little bit, if that's okay.
Please do.
Is that, the upsell for buy-side agents for forever was, I don't cost you anything, so you might as well use me, right? A lot of those buy-side agents who had a lack of expertise and a lack of experience and a lack of everything had sex appeal to their credit for whatever reason. They had charisma, but they weren't knowledgeable and they weren't experts. And frankly, the job that they did was the job that the buyer could have done themselves, but wanted the either reassurance of another person or the pleasure of that broker's company. The second that starts to cost the purchaser, they will no longer frivolously waste their money on a non-expert buy-side broker. So if on the buy side of things, if you position yourself as actually someone who is an expert, that adds value to the process, that does more than just sends you pretty pictures, those buy-side brokers are going to stay, right? So this in social media, I think, has a carryover where if that's sort of your messaging and less of the spinning around and looking beautiful, I think that really that's going to start to pay off, and those are the folks who are going to have staying power.
What are your thoughts, Nick?
So a lot of my prospecting is outbound, but what is really important to me is what I do with the listings that I get, and then how do I present that to the audience, and then how do they perceive that? And if it's quality content, then it's going to be, after a while, they keep seeing quality content, and that quality then becomes a part of my persona. So
Very good.
that's why, or that's how I use social media as a tool. And then just in general, going back to the landlord who was asking me to show the dog to her assistant. In that aspect, people are looking at your background. It doesn't. I just took a listing.
They're looking at everything.
Yeah, there's one video where I'm dancing in front of one house and then another because they're all selling at asking or above asking, and it's like 7 different properties. But they said that they love the dancing, and that was from about 2 years ago. So they went all the way back. But it's really important how you present yourself to the public, because today it's so easy just to type somebody's first name and their last name, but also showcase what you know. Just like Jordan said, put something out there that's relevant to what's happening right now, and educate your audience, and maybe. Most importantly, show some of your personal life also.
I think it's important to show your personal life, but what do you say to the people who say, social media is overexposed? We're just way too overexposed, and I don't need to know everything, or I don't need to see everything. I mean, what do you say to that? I don't believe that we're overexposed. I think we are in complete control of what we post, what we want to post, the message we send out there. One of the things I think people need to understand is, if you want to do social media correctly, is you put thought into what you want to post, thought into what you want to say. What's the message you want to get at? With every post you send out there, there has to be a message or a reason.
Or
and
a subtle message.
Or, well, right,
Like
or a subtle
quality content. There's no
100%.
direct message there, but that message is conveyed through the viewer.
Absolutely.
It's like an art, more or
Yeah,
less.
no, it really is.
That's exactly correct. But it's also part of your brand. When people think of you, do they put you in this brand category? And when I teach social media, I say the same thing. We start the class always with, who are you? Yeah. And if you don't know who you are, you're not going to be effective out there in your postings or in your social media presence, because people are going to say the same thing. Who are you? Who are you? I mean, you're a dime a dozen. Real estate agents in particular, a dime a dozen. So who are you? Why should I pay attention to you? What is your value? And what makes whatever you want to say worth me listening to? And that's the message I try and get across with the importance of social media, especially in our business, especially if you are in the listing business, to showcase. And by the way, your sellers are looking at it also. It's not just the people who are on your friend network. Absolutely. Your sellers are looking at your presentation also, just like they're looking at your websites when you put up their listing. I don't like this picture. Can you do this? Can you change that? What about this word? What about that word? I get it. Okay? It's all about putting. So do people think that we're overexposed? I mean, maybe. But then I say you don't have to follow, quite frankly.
If they're spending money on you, or if they're trusting you with their asset, then they build the trust through what.
But it's also, it's also a great way of keeping up with what your friends are doing, right? Watching their progress, watching their success, watching what they're doing, whether it's on the personal side of that friendship, or whether it's on the business side of that friendship, right? What listing do they listen? Sometimes I see a listing on social media before I see it when I'm searching, right? And that's just what it is. Of course, I'd find it when I actually did a search. But sometimes I'll see that listing just by looking at social, and then I'll be like, okay, I'm going to remember that. But when I do start that search for that buyer, for that person in the next day or 2 or 3. So there is definite, I think, benefit to it. Do you see any downside to social media? Other than being stupid and foolish, in posting?
Only if you post like a jackass.
Right.
The only downside is, if you present yourself as somebody, see this a lot, especially with younger persons who present themselves as being too party forward. right? People don't need to know that you're out late, and people don't need to know that you're drinking, and people don't need to
Especially
know
as a professional.
as a professional.
Well, that's correct.
Right? You know, so I've always had this, and I slacked a little bit, but like I used to have this rule that if I was ever in a photo or my face was ever in a photo, that there wouldn't be any alcohol visible in the photo. Doesn't matter if we'd been having drinks all night. You hide the glasses, you put them low, you crop them out, just to make sure that people didn't ever associate me with that type of thing.
Right,
I do like my martini post on Saturday and Sunday, though, because, I'll save it for Saturday and Sunday. But, that martini post is very important.
Listen, it's very important.
Cocktail.
But for instance, you can
Might
pull
not
off
be
the
too
diamond
bad,
stud, and I can't.
I can pull up. Of course you can. Absolutely you can.
All right, tennis bracelet.
Tennis bracelet, diamond stud, whatever. All right, artificial intelligence. Okay, that's a humdinger, and there's a word, humdinger. That is something that really, I've adopted it. In the beginning, I'm like, you know what? That's not for me. It's way too intelligent. It's way too invasive. Maybe it's way too a lot of things. Now I've kind of embraced it. I mean, I use it for my show. End of the day, is it a detriment? Will it be a detriment, or is it going to be helpful? I mean, I can go on either side of that at the moment. I'm still not 100% there because I think there's a very major security problem, potential problem with that, if not managed properly. Thoughts on artificial intelligence?
We're already in Skynet.
Yes, we
Terminator.
absolutely are.
It's done, guys. Like
Not the
what-
Flintstones anymore.
Not the Flintstones. We're not stopping this thing. It's gonna grow. I'm sorry. There's no brakes anymore. Good luck.
Yeah.
We're all on this train.
And every now and then I use it to help me write a listing description. Not
Yeah.
so much to copy and paste it, but I just want to see what is it going to say
Yeah.
about this property.
Same
As
here.
I tell it to revise, shorten the paragraph
Mm-hmm.
or the listing description, and it might highlight something that I didn't initially grab. So it's interesting to see.
And we're
What
all
You get pointers from it. I agree with you. You
Right,
might not
just to
remember
see,
something
yeah,
or think
there's
of something, but
that
you,
I'm missing.
right?
and then,
Absolutely.
okay,
I
pointed
totally agree
this
with
out
that.
and
But all of
Yeah.
our apps and sites and stuff like that, they're already using artificial intelligence anyway. We're already using it. It's used to like bridge gaps in coding. It's used, for instance,
Yeah.
if you watch certain elements of of television shows or movies that have computer generated effects. There's a lot of artificial intelligence that's employed and stuff like that.
Oh, we had
It's
an actor
everywhere.
strike that
We're
went on for a
all-
very long time because of artificial intelligence.
We're all using it, whether we know it or not.
Mm-hmm.
But for business, I think the most important thing is just to keep everything as simple as possible. So sometimes it just gets a little
Yeah.
too complicated. So it's just keep it simple.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
my,
that's
my
one of the things
Yeah.
I worry about with artificial intelligence because you do need to very much keep it simple, but it's so big, I think. And when you type something in, they'll give you, a list of or a paragraph that goes on and on and on, and sometimes way too much information. Sometimes you got to pick and choose what you want out of that information. I've never just copied and pasted and used it because it sometimes doesn't make sense.
Right.
But you got to be careful because there could be a lot of stuff there that's not, relevant to what you're trying to say or get that message out there. In a listing, I mean, I've read some board packages in the last 6 or 7 or 8 months where knowing the buyers as well as you think you know them, and you're reading the letters that they're producing, the personal
not
letters,
by
and
them.
and you're like, you wrote that letter? Really? Mm-hmm. Okay, got it.
I will say
Right.
that reference letters have never been better.
That's correct.
I mean, they are exceptionally well written these days.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct. And it's kind of like I laugh out loud. But then recently somebody asked me to write her a reference letter to get into a master's program. And I went on artificial intelligence, boop, 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 and it came out, I mean, so perfect. I said, I can't send that in. I can't send that in.
Right.
I mean, it was just like way too perfect. Yeah. So I took a couple of sentences here, a couple of sentences there,
Right.
wrapped it around what I wanted to say anyway, because I know this person very well. She worked with me for years. But I looked at this and I said, okay, schools don't realize that this is an AI-generated letter. I mean, give me a break.
Yeah, and they're starting to become geared to pick up on things like that.
Of course they are. All right, last question. What is your earliest memory of New York City? We're all in real estate. We're all in New York. Let's leave it at New York. What is your earliest memory of Being around New York, whether it was while you were in the business, out of the business, what was it? Or what is it?
Being a young kid, I had an Uncle John who was he was a limo driver, and he took us into the city. And I remember he was pointing out as we were crossing the George Washington Bridge, the Empire State Building, and then dropped us off at the New York Aquarium.
All the iconic spots.
Right. So
Historical iconic spots. I think I can probably share a lot of that too. When I was younger, I lived in Westchester. We came in, every once in a while, whatever, and it was always to one of those, the Empire State Building, the Statue of Liberty. It's like, the World Trade Center at the time.
right.
Sites that I avoid like the plague today because I'm a New Yorker and I'm like, I don't care about those things anymore. Too touristy, too whatever. But those were my earliest memories. Mr. Jordan Shea.
One of my earliest memories, we flew in late night to, I think it was JFK, LaGuardia, it doesn't matter. And one of the cab drivers, right, was outside, but not a cab driver. One of the guys goes, "Oh, you need a ride? Oh, you need a ride." The guy that they tell you at airports to avoid, right, because he's going to gouge you, especially if you're a tourist. And us being rubes, said, "Yeah, sure, we need a ride. We'll take one." And he had a black limousine that was a 1980s style with a boomerang antenna.
Oh my
on the
God.
back.
Oh, wow.
And he played gospel music from a cassette and had a dangling air freshener that was a sort of like a papal or imperial hat. And
So
I remember
like
thinking
this?
how wild this is
Right.
and super weird. And then he drove us to our hotel, which was, of course, in Times Square.
Of course.
But also
The neighborhood I avoid like the plague.
while the Hudson Valley is beautiful, where else can you see a bulldog skateboarding like in Central Park? So every now and then, if you need the abstract touch of life, this is a great place to come.
People get confused sometimes when I refer to New York City as my town.
Right.
I've been calling it my town forever, and that's one of the reasons why. Okay, what you
abstract.
see here,
Right.
what you see here, what you experience here, when you live here, there's no place in the world like it. I think we talked about it last week on the show. There's no place like here.
And
So
that's why I think in the Hudson Valley, you get the best of both worlds. You can be here
Oh,
in a
100%.
reasonable time frame, or you can be
and
out in
as
the
I've gotten
country.
older, I'm looking at the suburbs and the city, and if I can figure out at some point, not now, but at some point, to be able to do, cross living or whatever, I absolutely would, because I come from that, and I remember the peace and quiet and the calm, and then snapping into New York City when you really want to. All right, gentlemen, that was a great conversation. Thank you, Nicholas Cuomo, Jordan Shea. Thank you for being with us today. I will be right back with my thoughts for the day. Don't go anywhere. Okay, everybody, so what I'm thinking about this week, the real estate market is constantly evolving, shaped by economic trends, societal shifts, and technological advancements. In recent years, we've witnessed significant changes in the real estate landscape. Urbanization continues to drive demand for housing in cities, leading to soaring property prices and a surge in high-rise developments. However, the COVID-19 pandemic has prompted reassessment of priorities, with remote work fueling a newfound desire for spacious homes in suburban and rural areas. Rising interest rates have fueled the all-cash purchasers in New York City, and a lack of inventory is constant. This shift has led to a revitalization of suburban real estate markets and an increased demand for properties offering larger living spaces and outdoor amenities. As the market adapts to these changing dynamics, innovative approaches to real estate such as virtual tours and digital transactions are becoming increasingly prevalent, reshaping the way properties are bought and sold. In this dynamic environment, staying informed and adaptable is essential for navigating the ever-changing currents of the real estate market here in New York City and anywhere. We are out of time, so that's our broadcast for today. Thanks to my guests for being here on set with me. You can follow me on Facebook, on Threads, Instagram, LinkedIn, or TikTok at Vince Rocco, or my website, thinkvince.com. John Wooden says, and one of my favorite quotes lately, if you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over? And from all of us at Talking New York and the More Network, to all of you all around the world, thanks for spending a part of your day with us. and I will see you next time. Goodbye, everybody.